Hi everyone. Thank you for taking the time to join our webinar on Kturn 101, Automated Testing for SAP S4HANA Conversions. My name is Kturn and I'm the Portfolio Manager for Kturn, the all-in-one product for S4HANA conversions designed to automate and manage system conversions from start to finish. A few things to be noted before we get started. We'll be sending out a link to the recording of the webinar to everyone who has registered. It will also be available on our website at a later point in time. All participants have been muted upon entry, so please ask your questions via the questions tab and we'll address them at the end of the webinar. The speakers for today's webinar are Vaidehi Srinivasan and Vignesh Barni. Vaidehi is primarily an SAP S4HANA solution architect who has over 25 years of SAP expertise and is the product champion for Kturn. Vignesh is one of the product engineers of Kturn and will run through a demo of the product today. Now, without further ado, I'll hand over the webinar to Vaidehi.
Thanks, Kturn, and thanks to everybody who has joined the webinar today. This is the second in the series of webinars that addresses the challenges during the conversion journey and how Kturn helps address each of those. So as we get closer to 2025, each customer is already looking at a digitization journey and what he would have to face when he moves into the S4 world. Shown here are the S4 challenges that you would face as you embark on this journey. These challenges exist in every phase of the conversion journey as you move from ECC to S4. So if you look at the discover phase, unless a proper assessment is done, you enter into the project with a huge risk. And once you get into the explore, the custom code adaptation, the testing issues and the defects handling, and the accuracy of converted data. These areas seem to be critical, and if they are addressed well ahead of time and also addressed in the right fashion during each phase of the project, then that would ensure that you have a successful go-live. Based on customer surveys done earlier, the feedback that we have received tells us that custom code management and test management seem to be one of the biggest challenges in this journey. What we would address in this webinar is to bring out the complexities in the testing and also explain to you how Kturn addresses these challenges. Just a recap on the first seminar that we had. That was primarily about the S4HANA assessment and how Kturn helps us doing those assessments. Kturn-based assessments delivers a business case for the S4 conversion. It helps understand the complexity of the existing ECC landscape on the technical, functional, and also the business fronts. The assessment provides a fit gap analysis that arises due to the simplification during the conversion. You also get an L1 project plan and the resource loading, both on the customer side and on the system integrator side. And you get multiple strategy documents, primarily the testing, the HADR, the cutover, and the dual landscape strategies. So at the end of the assessment, the customer is equipped with complete details on how he should tackle the conversion. And this helps in reducing the risk and also the project timeline for the conversion. This is primarily because most of the unknowns have been brought out in the open in the discovery phase itself. The assessment is generally a 4 to 6 week exercise that Kturn performs on copies of your system. So this is as much about the S4 as Kturn, how it gets used in the S4HANA assessment. Before we deep dive into the testing module, I would like to take the next couple of minutes to give you an overview of the Kturn. So Kturn does not. Okay, but before that, let's just have the poll. Primarily, if you have not seen the assessment webinar, please let us know if you would like a session on the assessment capabilities of Kturn, and we would gladly bring it out to you. So if you have answered that question, then we can move on to the rest of the webinar. Thank you. So before we deep dive into the testing module, let's take the next couple of minutes and explain to you that what Kturn does. Primarily, Kturn manages a complete transition from ECC to S4. It has multiple modules and it brings in a lot of experience from on the SAP systems and a number of conversions that we have performed in the last couple of years. It also enriches your productivity starting from project management up until go live. And Kturn is also a SAP qualified partner package solution. What you see on the screen is the various modules of Kturn, which addresses from the assessment all the way up till the go live. So the impact analysis, the roadmap guide, the effort estimation, the license audit and optimization, the landscapes and system management, and the training launchpad. These modules kick in at the discover phase itself. And the rest of the modules, the custom code management, part of it gets addressed in the discover phase where you figure out how many custom code will have to be remediated, but the bulk of the custom code management is addressed during the when you actually adapt the custom code. And the project management gets used through the complete exercise. The test suite, which starts from identifying the test case and scenarios and all the way up till the defect management until the close of the project, that's handled by the test suite, and the bulk of the next R would be addressing the test management. So if you look at the testing and conversion projects, if you want to ensure a successful conversion, testing is mandatory, and it happens at different stages in the life cycle of the project. It is done in different systems. It could be the sandbox, the development, and the QA, and in multiple QA systems. So every time you have a mock conversion, you would need to do some kind of testing. And it's done by different set of people, and the scope varies from testing to testing. So for the unit testing, you might be testing a different set of scenarios. For a regression testing, it might be a different set. For the user acceptance testing, it would be a much larger test, and that would be done by the end users themselves. Even though testing realistically happens in the realization phase, a lot of the activities have to be done in the project preparation and the blueprint phase itself. This is where you go about to finalize your testing tools, finalize your scenarios, finalize the complexity of your testing. So if you get on to this early on, then you're able to successfully go through the testing phase with minimal defects and also a much smoother go live. As we progress through the phases of the project, some of the test cases are identified by Kturn are also auto-tested and the results documented. Any defects that arise out of testing are managed in the defect management suite and tracked, and these fixes brought into the system early on during the next conversion run. By doing this, the efficiency and accuracy is enhanced, and the time and resources consumed during the testing is drastically reduced. The more errors that are identified and fixed during the project guarantees a much peaceful go live. So if you look at the various phases of the test management and how Kturn brings in value, so starting from the preparation phase to the identification phase and then to the execution phase. Kturn has been built keeping in mind the key areas that are critical for a successful testing. Primarily, a good coverage of all the business processes and the prioritization of what should be tested has been considered. Tests should be designed to be usable and more so reusable because you're going to be doing upgrades in of appropriate data during testing is very critical. And the test management approach should be compliant with the Activate methodology. So that will ensure that the testing does not hang out there, but happens through the phase of the project. And throughout the build phase, the approach will be reviewed and adjusted to meet the needs of project delivery. Kturn is able to has considered all these aspects and brings in all the features that are required to address these areas. Primarily challenges in testing, insufficient documentation. You would see how Kturn addresses that by documenting everything, all the test cases, scenarios, and the test results. And the next one being the configuration owner and unavailability of scenario identification. Primarily, the scenarios and the cases are identified from the usage of the system by Kturn. So that addresses that particular concern. And then you have a high volume and variety of data sets to be tested. So when you have a test lab and when you have so many test cases, Kturn is able to pick in, you're able to pick and choose from these test cases and put them into the various testing cycles. And minimal manual work during test execution will definitely help you go through this faster. And setting up the environment for testing, Kturn already is the test environment and the test management, the defect tracking, and the test reporting tool. And thereby you're also able to optimize the test service costs. So this time I open up for another poll and then hand it off to Vignesh, who would be walking you through the demo of Kturn. The poll question for you is, what do you think is the major risk of a testing strategy? Is it the unavailability of business process documents? Is it the unavailability of testing tools? Is it the ineffective collaboration between test and development teams? Or the absence of a test case repository? We'll give you a couple of minutes to answer that, and once that is done, we would be handing it off to Vignesh, who would do the demo for you.
Hello everyone, I'm Vignesh here, one of the product engineering person in Kturn. So thanks a lot Vaidehi, that was very informative about how testing happens in an S4HANA project and what are the major challenges faced by anybody, be it the system integrator or the customer for during an S4HANA conversion project. So without further ado, let's just get into the product right away. Yeah, so I hope I'm visible and let's just get started with one of the projects I've got here. And before I could start, Kturn, of course, helps in automating so many activities, the prime one being test case recommendations, for which I have to have my system connected or my landscape. So I'll just have a check on my landscape management and see if I have got my landscape connected. Yes, of course, I've got my landscape connected now. And let's just head to the face kernel now. And face kernel is typically the heart of the Kturn application, where we've got the entire Activate framework sliced and diced into phases and subphases. And one main thing, because there are so many buzzwords that happen during S4HANA project, phase by phase. When you think about discover, it's all about the assessment study, the system study, the impact analysis, the duration estimation, and the effort estimation. When you go into the prepare, it's about preparing a project team, identifying the skill and the right stakeholders, and creating a project plan and a methodology. When it is explore, it gets into the cutover strategy or the cutover checklist creation and the sandbox conversions. And here comes realize, the longest and probably the hardest phase of any SAP migration project, the testing. Because SAP thyself brings so many simplifications into this application itself, be it the column store, be it the data structure changes, the amount of test cycles any project team has to undergo is massive, for which a common platform or a collaborative tool, more per se, an intelligent and automated tool is required so that this happens in a breeze and more seamlessly. Because the testing team and the defect management team are two separate silos teams working separately, you need something which holds every single team in a project together. Because there'll be multiple loops of text, mails, threads, files generated, you got to have everything in a single place. And here's where Kturn comes in for this thing. And before we even think about testing in the realize phase, Kturn proactively lets you have an idea or at least a strategy towards this particular testing. And here we are in the application value and scoping, looking at the conversion readiness. Kturn does provide something called as check test case recommendations. And here's where we will be recommending test cases by automatically connecting to your system and having it recorded. Before I get into the testing a bit more, I would like to explain the entire modular structure of Kturn so as to understand why and how effective Kturn would be in an S4HANA conversion project. Let's get into the model kernel. Like how Vaidehi mentioned, Kturn has got 12 main modules, which is totally modularized into a framework, which means anything that happens in one module kind of affects the other module. Create a defect in a test suite, you get it in the issue tracking and management. Create an issue or something which actually creates an hindrance to the project, you will have it reflected in your project management. Have all your custom code objects recorded in the custom code management, link it up to your BPML in the business process management system, and also your test case. So this way, everything is more of a deep nested mesh or a clustered framework. So whatever happens in the tool, and it doesn't go out of, and there's no need for any other silo systems. So we'll continue from where we left off, the phase kernel, and in the discover phase, the test case recommendations. And I'm in the test catalog right now, and you could see I've already got the automated test cases recommended to me and have loaded into my test catalog already. I could see a magic button here saying auto recommend. Let's see what it actually does. Okay, I'm trying to connect to my system and it's checking it and seems like it is successful. I click on next. Wow. So looks like Kturn has recommended me 2 main business processes that needs to be checked, and I've got a nodal structure as well. So let's see what has it got. So underneath that, I see a scenario that is recommended to me for this particular project because I connected to a system. And underneath that scenario, well, it looks like it takes time. So you can understand the massive amount of test cases generated against this plan and the scenario. Yeah, looks like I've got all of them here. And typically, these processes and scenarios are identified from your system automatically, and the test case data are a permutation and combination fed into an intelligent framework that generates these test case data from your master and your customizing data. So let's just get this done and let's get moving. So clicking on next gets me the attributes which I have to load for these auto-recommended test cases, for which I could fill in, and I can have as many stakeholders as possible. I can plan so that it is good enough for my tracking, and I can also load additional information so that it could be linked up to the other modules, like I said, in the modules kernel page, where I can link it up to multiple other modules or the business processes. I can load my entrance and exit criteria. I can link up my TR objects, the OSS nodes, or the T codes even. So once I get completed, here I land up having the test suite catalog created for me. I've got different plans underneath that comes into scenarios, under which I also have the test cases. And these test cases are the ones which will be the executable activities which the testing team, the business team, or the consultant team would perform. And besides the auto recommendation, Kturn also supports loading of your test case documents by the auto import function, where people can download an Excel template, and moving further, people can load the same with their test cases loaded, and a similar kind of experience where people can have whatever they have in their business as their business process documents or test case documents gets loaded into Kturn. And here you have a plan, scenario, and test case hierarchy created for you automatically. Besides that, people follow different testing approaches and testing methodologies. So as to support that, it's not just the business way of creating plans. You can also create a plan which is more of a functional or a technical way by calling it an integration testing cycle or a sandbox testing cycle. So let's just get deeper into what Kturn has got as part of testing management. Let me launch one of the test cases here. Oh, looks like I'm into a huge screen as of now. So basically, one main test case item has got different attributes linked up to it. It will be a project management attribute, it will be the test management attribute by itself, the automation attribute, and then the issue tracking attribute. Let's go deeper into each of them. So starting with the test center, it is all about how this particular test case and how where it is placed, which phase it comes under or the subphase, and which task it comes into. So here I have the overview information about that. I also have the stakeholder information involved in it, since because the business being business would want any unit testing or string testing done before they even do the UAT testing. So you need to have multiple stakeholders assigned to each of the test case. Here I've got multiple stakeholders assigned and their statuses, and I also have multiple other participants involved in it. So what more? The plan versus actual. Since because the test health and the project health is very important, we go through a strict timeline abiding by tracking each of the date values of the test cases, the plan versus actual values, and the files. Since because every S4HANA conversion project generates huge amount of files, and you need a document management system where everything stays in a single place, and I can have a file attachment against this particular test case item. And here comes the collaboration platform which I'm talking about, be it a tester or a defect manager or a technical consultant who's working on that particular defect. People can chat and collaborate and have the information shared in it. So whatever happens with respect to this particular test case remains in here, and it's no overloading of information across systems or across applications. Everything happens in a single place here. And then comes the reference work items. Like I said before, Kturn is a deep clustered framework where every other module has a role to play. And here we have the test module having linkages to the project management module, the business process management module as well. So I'll be able to link up multiple tasks and issue items so that I know what is blocking which task and how that particular task could end up delaying my phase closure or my phase milestone or a project milestone. I can also have my technical objects like the transport objects, the OSS nodes, or the T codes linked up against this, as well as conducting meetings also happens. And all these attributes which I'm talking about is the project management attribute, which is a totally separate story by itself. And here we have the Wiki or notes which people could enter, have an image uploaded, or have a run through commentary on what this test case is all about. Besides being the catalyst for a successful S4HANA conversion project, also act as the tool for your subsequent upgrades as well, the service pack updates that comes after you move to S4 and the run phase of it. So this is about having all the knowledge in a single repository or a single intelligent tool, which is nothing but the Kturn. So let's get into the test lab, which is the test management framework which I'm talking about. And every test case would require a test script to be loaded, and Kturn does provision you to create those test scripts. I can have a test script loaded against this particular test case, and each of the test script will have their own attributes too. The test script items, the overview, and what the test script is, what is the version number of it, and the test sequence. And now, as a tester or a technical consultant, I know what to test, when to test, where to test, and how to test here. I can clearly see the instruction required for this test case to be done, what will be the expected results. And each happen in a sequence, since because there are so many other complex test sequences happening, and each of these test sequences would require data sets, which Kturn does provide to you on the fly. And we can also have the script documents loaded against the script document. And we also have the version history, since because the business changes and the main production line has got an everlasting, ever continuing change management processes. We'll be going through changes, and all those test sequence versions could be recorded in here. And this is about the test scripts. So what about the evidences? Since because we're talking about two separate teams with a project at stake, it is highly recommended that any defect which arises from the test engineering team goes through a validation so that to make sure the defect that is getting created is not a false negative, since because no project team would want a false negative defect created and loaded, so that you got to do a test evidence or submit a test evidence which Kturn allows you to by creating a test execution log which tells me whatever information I want to do. I want to load up against this particular test script, and I can select a test script. I can also select my outcome as well. And once I load them up, I have this test execution and evidence, and I could see the number of evidences created against this particular test case. Looks like there are 2 evidences created, one being 3 done and 1 failed. And let's see what it is all about. Well, I have a test sequence which says 3 steps, which was according to the test script was successful while 1 failed. And it looks like that's exactly what the header tells as well. And the link defects. So I can also link up multiple defects against an evidence and upload files as well. And there's the other one, which is full on successful. Every step taken is successful and this test case is being passed. Then we have the auto test console. Auto test console is something which comes along with the auto test recommendations. For those which are getting auto recommended and most of them being auto executed by Kturn, Kturn would automatically understand the sequence of it, since because we don't depend on the screen recording, but we hit the business layer. So we know according to the process, what is the test sequence that has to be followed through the business layer and what data to be loaded because of the intelligent engine which curated you the master data set from your master and the customizing data. Clicking on next, I have the input parameters to be passed, and further clicking more, I will have an auto executed test case, and the result of which will be logged as an evidence in the test lab automatically. And here's where Kturn comes in and helps you manage the time, the productivity of any testing team. And we also have the defects repository. Defects repository is something where people will have to manage defects, since because, like I said, no testing team will not have 100% successful test execution. People will end up creating defects. And here's where Kturn's defect repository comes in, where people can create defects and collaborate on it. Looks like I've got 2 defects created already, and I can also create a new defect, which links it up to the issue tracking and defect management module of Kturn. Like I said, each of them having a separate story by itself. And I'll just brush up on this, saying what it is and how it is helping you on that. Looks like I can create a defect. I can also raise it to SAP. I can have a priority assigned. I can also suggest a stakeholder or a participant. I can also infer on the plan start date and the end date, so that I can have all my defects on track on the radar and having happen it on the single platform in here. And looks like I've also got something called as generate test case report, which we will come back to that later as this webinar progresses. So here is this entire project management and the test management happening in a single place, in a single view, giving the attributes of a project management, the test suite, the defect management, and the automation part. Let's go back and see what else Kturn has got with respect to the test management. And it's not just the test identification, test monitoring, and the execution. It is also about the reporting, which matters to any project, since because it is highly recommended. And these test cases and these test plans or sprints or the cycles are the one which will impact the phase closures or the deadlines or the entire health of a project. So here we have got the project management dashboard, which talks about what, and the test management dashboard in here. Looks like I've got a beautiful dashboard curated to me, explaining the KPIs required. Looks like the test plan coverage talks about how the test repository which I have got is linked up to my BPML hierarchy and how it would benefit my change management when you go into a dual development strategy. Since because when you have a custom code getting remediated in your converted landscape systems, and the production support line will have multiple changes happening in their customizations. So when there is a subsequent mock-run that happens, there'll be a version clash between the new production copy and the already remediated custom code. So for which you got to make sure you load all the TR objects against a test case so that you can manage the versions and you know what to test and which is to be tested against each TR object movement, the transport object movement. Looks like I've got a total of 560 test cases generated against which 680 executions are recorded, out of which it looks like I've got 47 test defects generated. And here I've got a beautiful report telling me what are the how many have passed, how many have failed, and how many of them are converted into defects by their test cycles. I also have this test distribution by status and test distribution by testing type as well. And further coming down, I get the resource utilization table, which tells me who's working on what and who's taking much longer time in doing so. I also have got this test completion percentage, which talks about how the test cases are classified based on their priority and what is the coverage or the completion percentage of it. Since because the critical business processes need to be tested completely and the entrance criteria and the exit criteria has to be 100% and 100%, it is absolutely necessary to have a track or a tracker on how they are performing and how they are tested. So here's what I've got as a high level talk about Kturn, what Kturn has got with respect to the test management and the test suite module. We were talking about something called the test case report generation. So here I have a sample report generated automatically from Kturn, and I also noticed the number of opinions about a challenge in test management being lack of test documentations. I've got a test documentation automatically generated here telling which project it belongs to and who are the stakeholders. And furthermore, I have the project team information here. I have the test case summary of what it is, when it has happened, which phase or subphase it's linked to, which module it is linked to, and where it falls in the BPM hierarchy. I also have a linked test work item and the stakeholders who were involved in this particular test case execution, the participants, the planned start date and the end dates, any discussions, the technical information being a task linkage, an issue linkage, or a technical object linkage like the rise-up objects, the TR objects, the OSS nodes, and obviously any linked events or any stand-up calls happening with respect to this particular test case. Since because there are few test cases which would end up posing a serious threat to an entire S4HANA project, and for which Kturn has got its HANApedia, which will let you know of any issues it has come by already, so that you can have a heads up on what this issue is and how it was solved by using Kturn's HANApedia engine. We also have got the Wiki Notes, the test script, which we saw on the screen, and all these documented for the audit governance and the audit purposes. So I would stop with this particular document flow and I would give it back to Vaidehi to continue the webinar.
Thanks, Vignesh. So I suppose as Vignesh went through the various features of the test management, you would have mentally understood how Kturn is able to address the various challenges that occur during the project. And not just test management, it is a one complete suite where the project management, the custom code adaptation, and the landscape management, and all these multiple functions that you would do by different people involved in the project get addressed in a single portal. So irrespective of whether you're a program manager, a project manager, a consultant, a developer, tester, or an integration lead, so all of you get access to this tool and you're able to track the project very closely, thereby not losing out time in the collaboration. And also you have one central repository of information which gets utilized during your future upgrades as well, because all these test cases, the test results, the test evidences, because maybe 6 or 8 months down the line, you're ready for a new S4 version and you decide to do an upgrade. It is very unlikely that the people who tested during your S4 conversion are still available. So then you have a different set of testers, but then you already have the complete evidence of testing done earlier. So that doesn't have to, you don't have to have a separate session on educating your business users on what is to be tested, how it is to be tested. And the test evidence also comes in really handy for the people who resolve defects. So primarily, we're talking about two teams, a group of testers and a group of developers who are going to fix the defects. So once a defect is reported, the developers who are going to fix the defects can automatically log in, look at the screenshots, try to recreate the scenario, thereby reducing the time lost for collaborating between the two to get all these questions answered. So primarily with Kturn, you're also able to connect it with other testing tools in case you want to import the test cases from an existing test tool that you would have, or maybe from a spreadsheet, or also in any other format that you currently hold. And that is possible too. And a lot of test cases have been automated, and this automation happens at the business layer. And as we move forward, we are trying to automate a lot more activities during the testing and during the other phases of the conversion project as well. So at this point, I would like to open up the session for the third poll, and then we can move on to questions. Okay, that's a simple question. Do you want a full demo of Kturn? So if you can answer that question, then we'll open up the session for questions. Okay, we're closing the poll at this time and opening up the forum for questions. Okay, the first question I have here is, can I use Kturn as a separate tool for testing alone? Yes, the testing module can be used as a standalone module and can be used for testing. And to add to it, you can use it for testing an ECC landscape, an S4 landscape, or any other SAP landscape as well. The advantage of using this more for SAP itself is because of the knowledge base that it carries. But if you plan to use it for any other development, any other product, that is possible as well. The next one I have is, how is Kturn different from other testing tools? Okay, the first one being, yes, the test management tools, yes, there are plenty available, and we know of many tools that have been available for about a couple of decades now. But this is primarily different because of the amount of deep nested workflows and the management framework that it has got. So whatever happens in a project is in a single place, and you're able to get a view of the entire project from a single window. And all the other silo systems need to have periodic updates and visits to be in constant communication. The next question is, what is the connection with SAP and with Solman? Primarily, yes. Okay, Solman does have a test management suite, and Kturn has its own test management suite. But primarily what happens is, with Kturn, the amount of time that you will take to set up a complete environment of Solution Manager is a lot more. And also that the expertise that you need to set up Solution Manager is a special kind of expertise that not even many basis people have. With Kturn, you're able to set up the whole environment. It's available on the cloud. You're able to set it up in a matter of hours, and you can get started with the project. The other question I have is there any accelerator? Primarily, Kturn is the accelerator, and it has the various functionalities that we presented, provides you with the accelerator mechanisms which make the project go a lot faster. Okay, there's another question on pricing. Yes, the pricing model is per user per month, it being a SaaS product. And how can, the next question I have is, how can Kturn be helpful in the run phase? Kturn, during future upgrades and release management, Kturn comes in handy. And we also allow you to import from other test archives, and you have integration with other tools going on in the future. The next question is, SAP is pushing hard for Solution Manager 7.2 to be the platform of choice for much of the functionality provided by Kturn in regard to S4 conversion. What integration exists between Kturn and Solman? Why Kturn? Primarily, yes, integration with Solman can be provided because with the test management suite of Solman, if you have BPML saved in Solman, yes, that can be imported in here. If you ask me why Kturn, primarily it's the simplicity with which you can use Kturn. It comes with the enhanced knowledge of the S4 conversion, and setting up Kturn is a lot quicker than setting up Solution Manager and getting the platform ready. The next question is, can tests be automated, and how test cases are generated through Fiori and SAP GUI? Yes, test cases can be automated. Test cases are generated based on the usage of the system. So we study the system from the earlier usage of your system. So we know what kind of transactions have run. So we build the test cases, and we also know what kind of data has gotten added to your system. So we build the test cases based on that. And yes, it can be done both through Fiori and SAP GUI. That is possible. Is there a way to import the data from Kturn to Solman? Yes, all data in Kturn can be exported, and if Solman allows you to import the same, that can be done. So all this data is primarily stored in the database and the underlying database of Kturn. It can be exported in an Excel format or an XML format and be provided to you. The next question is, can you do integrated tests, for example, purchase goods, receipts, and supplier invoice? I believe it can be done, but I will get in touch with you in person to understand the question a little more and be able to respond to you in person, Mr. Nguyen. The next question is, how do you generate the business process library? The business process library is primarily generated by looking at the current configuration of the system. So in SAP, when you have configured the system, we take a look at the configuration tables, the master table, and the transaction tables, and we build the entire enterprise structure from the SPRO transaction that you would be familiar with. How long does it take to set up Kturn to achieve comprehensive functionality of the tool? Primarily, you'll have to get your a copy of your system connected to Kturn, which is available on the web. So I would say a maximum of about a day or two is what it takes to get the whole thing set up, connected, and get started on your activities. So we have typically done many assessments with Kturn, assessments which run over a 4-week or a 6-week period, but the connection that is required for assessment is the same connection that you would hold on to during your conversion as well. So that does not take more than a day or two. I believe that's the last of the questions we have, and I thank all of you for attending the webinar, and please feel free to get in touch with us for any further questions that you may have, or if you'd like to have demos for the product. Thank you very much and have a good day. Thank you.